eat. But if you're still eating that today, because you have not realized the importance of history, because your history will tell you that Africans did not eat that food. My favorite food growing up was rice. Rice and peas. Did we eat rice in that way in Africa? Did we? Study your history. Understand that when you develop a diet for centuries, and you suddenly then change it, you're going to have physical problems. You're going to have the high blood pressure. But you know, our way of getting around that is, well, I've got high blood pressure because my father had it. But why did your father have it? I'm going to advance something for you. What you call racism is a mental health issue. Racism is a mental health issue because when you walk through the door to get a job as a person of African descent, and you have to wonder if you're going to get it because of the color of your skin, you are going through stresses. When you walk down the street, as I did as a teenager, and would say, if the police passed me, how long is it before they turn back around and get out and come and confront me? And I had that many times as a young man. They were up in my face. Stress, racism, stress, stress, bad diet, stress. Racism is a stressor. It impacts on your mind. Now, if you study science, you will understand that anything that impacts on the mind impacts on the body. Your mind and your physiology are interconnected. So when you have a sense of fear, when you have an emotional attack based on your fear, it actually impacts on you physically. So that high blood pressure that you think you have just because it's your diet, no. You're carrying around residual anger that has been there for generations. People from the Caribbean often have very, you know, and I don't want to make it a racial thing because there is no such thing as race. So don't think racial. I'm talking about conditioning. Often have a very, how would I put it? Interesting way of expressing themselves when they don't like something. That didn't come from nowhere. During the Ma'afa and during the time on the slave plantations, we were conditioned to respond to things in a particular way. So for example, many people used to think that black people were just good at boxing because, you know, it was something genetic. But you don't realize that on the slave plantation, the overseers and the plantation owners would make black men fight physically for their entertainment, prize fighting. Now, they did it for two reasons. One was entertainment, the other one was to condition you. What you call black on black violence is an outgrowth of self-hatred, what we call self-negation. Self-negation is when you look at yourself and you see things that you think are ugly about yourself. On the most basic physical level, it's the size of your nose, your lips, and it's the darkness of your skin. And you will find ways to escape who you are. Self-negation. Where did you get that from? You got that from the conditioning process on the plantation. There's a guy called Winthrop Jordan who wrote about black, the concept of black in Elizabethan England, that black was something nefarious and evil before they even met Africans. They believed that blackness was related to something evil and dirty and soiled. So when they saw us and labeled us as black, it fed into a particular worldview. So you have to understand that your view of your color, your features, is related to a conditioning process that lasted not even for 400 years. Because Kamani told you already, you have to go back to the Arab imposition on Africa. That's why we ain't even touched. But we're scared of that one. Because that is deep. Because you're talking 1,000 years. You're not talking 400, and it hasn't ended because all you have to do is look at what's happening in Darfur. And that's not, that is not Arab versus Africans. That is Arabized Africans not knowing who they are. Now you tell me if identity doesn't matter. What I'm saying here, as was said already, you see, I predicate this on the fact that we may never have this event again. Because it might make people so uncomfortable. They say, you know, they came up talking all this heavy stuff, and you know, it was racist, and it was this, and it was that. I don't ever want to hear that again. But what I'm trying to say to you is, whether you want to hear it or not, it is there in the atmosphere. And when things happen among the young people and they suddenly explode, it's then you go look for the social or political scientists or those community people who knew that the problem was already there. What I'm saying is that young black people are carrying around anger. I used to be angry when I was a young man. I didn't even know what it was. I couldn't tell you why I was angry, but I was hurt. Because why? Because at school, I was never taught anything about myself. I was not educated, and my parents didn't educate me because they didn't know. I don't blame them, but you've got to deal with the reality. The reality is that enslavement has not ended. And why has it not ended? Because the greatest thing that happened during the system of enslavement was the removal of the African mind. That's why Chainwazy wrote about decolonization of the African mind. The mind is the sublime instrument of your consciousness. You can't get fixated on the body and not connect it to the mind. How do you see yourself? What is the crime? When you look in the mirror and you look at your lips and your nose and your hair and you think there's something wrong with it, that is a crime against humanity. Because the first, and I've got to be careful, but I'll say it, the first millionaire that I know of in the United States was Madam C.J. Walker. Because she did what? She came up with the hot comb, and she came up with those things that would allow you to escape from your African self. So if I can change my hair, if I can change my external appearance, and if you think that I'm lying, which you know I'm not, look at skin bleachers. You see, when you laugh about this, I want to say one thing. I'm not saying don't laugh, but what I'm saying is don't allow your laughter to escape from the reality of what I'm talking about. Because when somebody puts bleach on their skin and they burn through layers, that is no laughing matter. When somebody puts, I'm going to say it, because, you know, when somebody puts lye or products of lye on their hair, which could burn through metal continuously, and what do they call it? Creamy crack in the United States? Continuously burning their hair. That is not the act of somebody who is culturally misunderstood. That is not the act of somebody that occurred random. It is the act of somebody who has been victimized by notions that somehow their hair is deficient. That somehow, if I can get rid of this African hair, I might get that job. If I can make my skin lighter, I might get the job. In fact, you might love me more if my skin is lighter. That's why some people said that if Barack Obama looked like me, he couldn't become the president of the United States. Because why? Because somehow, because Barack looks the way he does, you can say that his intelligence is based on what? Based on one side of his heritage. You see, many of us think we're sophisticated, and I probably will get in trouble with this, but you know what? So there is no such thing as race. Understand. Now, just because there's no such thing as biologically as race doesn't mean that race as a concept, as a sociological category doesn't exist. I'm not saying that. What is race? Race is a conceptual framework that provides privileges for those people who are perceived as being on the top tier of the racial system. What is gender? It's an amazing. Gender does the same thing as race does, so does class. What you do, the privileged people who author these things create a system that tells you that I'm the most valued. And your relative distance from me tells you where you are. So in the racial schema, the African is on the bottom of the racial scheme. And it's, the issue is the darker the berry, the worse the trunk. That's why during the 1960s, African Americans had to reverse that and say, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. It wasn't a racial thing. It's because we had to recondition ourselves to understand that your black skin is a beautiful thing. And as we talked about ancient Kemet, land of the black skins. People with black skin, it wasn't a racial thing, but it wasn't even just skin. It was about a particular type of consciousness and a way of relating to the world. So what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that you are not healed. You haven't even started. You're not healed because you've never studied the subject properly. Also, many of us reject the people who come with the healing. The ones that come with the healing are often the ones that are left behind within their family. They're often the ones that are attacked by their community. I've done a lot of this kind of work. And you know how many times black people have got up in my face and said nasty things about me? Because I'm trying to tell them something or not giving me the support. See, so there's some people who come out right up and they'll do things. Then there's other people who won't support you. Why? Because as Esther was talking about, they are afraid to deal with being associated with you. Oh, I'm not like him, I don't want to be with him. Why? Because somehow you believe that by acting a certain way, you're going to be safe. No such thing. Often, I'll be honest with you, I find that often white people really respect me. They treat me with a lot of respect because I respect myself. I'm not waiting for somebody external outside of me to tell me who I am. When I went to Africa, some of the people that I met, only a few said, well, you're not African. I didn't ask them whether I was African. I studied my history. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, as Africans and as Europeans, you cannot live in the same country without having a dialogue that is truthful and honest. I will not pretend that my ancestors were not enslaved just so I can be your friend. No more than you will pretend that Nazi Germany did what they did to Britain. You don't rewrite that history because you want to be friends with people in Germany. You let the history speak for itself. So just as much as you can talk about the history of what the Japanese did to you, then we can talk about the history, rightfully so, about what the transatlantic system of enslavement did and is doing to us. We have a right. And what I would ask for those people who say that they are sympathetic or they empathize with African people, what are you doing in your own community? If you are of European descent, when you hear people talk, the kind of talk they do when there's no black people around, what do you do in your family? Do you say that's wrong or do you go along with it? You can't come around other people and say you're for or you understand their struggle if you're not fighting within your own community, talking to your own people in the language that you know because you understand because you come from that community. We have to be honest. And the honesty will require that, you know, if you say that's your friend, then your friend should understand the position that you take based on history, culture. Not, I must surrender the truth in order to become part of this society. Black people, you've got to stop doing that. You've got to support your people. You've got to support people that support you. You know, look at it this way. Liverpool's got a lot of black people. Look at the turnout tonight. It doesn't impress me. But I know that the turnout is a reflection of us not knowing what's important. We don't know that this is important. But for us who are older, if you didn't get this information, make sure your grandchildren get it. find out about the books. Start doing the reading. Start showing the respect that you have for yourself, so that the generations coming after you won't